I personally think that Flins is going to be very future-proof. Let's talk about it. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. There are a couple of reasons that I personally believe that whenever you invest into Flins, you're getting a character that's not going to fall off for a very long time. The first thing that I want to mention is that he's an Electro DPS, and the reason why I consider that to be relevant is because generally speaking, I find that Electro DPSs generally have quite a long shelf life. However's doesn't make them that often, so whenever you pull for whoever the new 5-star Electro DPS is, chances are, they're going to last you for a very long time. I will say, the gap between his release and Varessa's release is a lot shorter than the gap between Chloriander's release and Varessa's release. That was a much longer stretch of time without a new Electro DPS. However, before Clorox Bleach, you'd have to go all the way back to 3.x for Cyno, and then before that, you'd have to go even further back for Yaimiko. So generally you're getting a very solid upgrade that's going to last you for a very long time, and that's the nice thing with Electro DPSs. If you don't have one already, they tend to last quite long individually. Even if they do get power crept by a new shiny best Electro DPS, their own individual value tends to remain for a very long time. Clorox Bleach is still a really good DPS even now, and Varessa is still an absolutely busted DPS, and even whenever Columbina comes out and definitively puts Flins above her, I still believe that she's going to remain as being pretty solid. So I feel like there's that edge of reliability there. Otherwise, you can also be comfortable in the fact that the teammates he uses just aren't really all that contested. You're not really going to want to be using I know anywhere else. And eventually, Columbina is probably going to come out and likely replace her and seriously boost up the value of his teams. However, I personally expect the Archon of this region to benefit Notcry characters specifically, because lunar reactions are such a specific mechanic, and I don't believe that beyond Notcry, we're really going to see them all that much. So with that being said, you're not going to have a character that's contesting all of these crazy supports across your entire account, thus making it very easy to build your second half team. Sucrose is a character that's pretty good, but nobody that you absolutely need to keep on your other team. You can absolutely replace her with so many different options, whereas with Flins, she is practically irreplaceable, and is an amazing slot in there. And you can basically always be comfortable in the fact that they're never going to make him a better premium 5-star teammate for the final slot than Inefa. She was tailor-made for him, and there is absolutely no way that they're going to make some other character that power creeps her for Flins specifically. So if you do end up investing in his full premium team, you can be very confident in the fact that it is going to stay very fixed. It's not like it's going to constantly be changing, meaning that you can very safely invest into it over time, whether that be through spending more Primo Gems on constellations or weapons, or dumping a ton of Resonant to Perfect artifacts. No matter what, you're going to be very secure in your investment. The only other character I can imagine getting replaced is Sucrose, with a more specific animal character that helps Flynn specifically. I can see that happening. However, I wouldn't exactly expect it anytime soon, considering how good Sucrose's EM share is. But either way, those are two very strong points. He's likely to last you for a long time, and his teams are very easy to build around, not contesting teammates that you're really going to want for the rest of your account. He's also likely to stay very relevant with coming content over time. For example, I personally have more faith in Flins' long-term meta value as opposed to Lauma. This is because Lauma is a Bloom character, and I honestly just don't have that much faith in Bloom remaining relevant for longer than a couple of months. I do think she's going to stay strong for the rest of the Not Cry patch at least, but I do believe that she's not really going to last. I could very easily be proven wrong with Nayfair. That is something that I absolutely could eat my words with, but I do personally expect that over time Flins is going to come out on top, and I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if he ends up coming out to be one of the best DPSs in the game by the time that Not Cry's entire region is wrapped up. It also really helps that no matter what type of account you have, and no matter where you're at in Genshin, he is basically always going to be a useful pull for you. And no matter how you decide to continue investing into your account, he's always going to be there and remain as a really solid character that you can turn to. Essentially, if you're a newer player, he has plenty of good 4-star teammates you can use with him, and sure, he is not going to be at his absolute best without a Nefa. However, he's still going to be very strong, and there's a free-to-play friendly craftable polearm that you can craft in Not Cry that's going to be very good for him. So you are far from having no options with him. That is not the case whatsoever, and if you're newer, then he's a strong DPS that's easily able to carry you while not really needing any specific other 5-star teammates in order to simply get you through the early game. Sure, he does want an Effa, but to say that he absolutely needs her would just not really be true. Yes, it is a big team damage decrease, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's bricks without her. I think the best way to put it into perspective is that Skirk is far worse off without a Scoffier compared to Flins without an Effa. One of them can definitely make do, the other one practically just feels way worse without the chef. And if you're somebody that's more experienced and you have plenty of DPSs on your account, well then you're still pulling for what is likely to end up being the best new Electro DPS. I do expect that Flins is going to come out on top over time. With an EFA on release, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he was reaching Veressa performance. In fact, I personally expect him to be better than Veressa. And even if you find that to be somewhat of an uncertain statement at the minute, just wait until Columbina. He is likely to get an insane ceiling increase no matter what your investment is on him, and he is definitely going to end up coming out on top. For the cases in which he is good, he is simply going to last you a very long time, especially because he's so specifically good for electrocharged. We're likely not going to get a DPS that's better for this specific reaction for a very long time. Because that's something else that you should consider. Most electro DPSs these days play in Overload. Flins wants to play in Electrocharged very specifically. He doesn't want anything to do with Overload. So that means that even if you do have another good Electro DPS, that doesn't really mean he's clashing on your account, so to speak, because you have other supports that you're able to use with him, and he serves a different purpose. And considering that we're getting more bosses these days that have more specific mechanics, there is a situation in which you would prefer having an Electrocharged DPS over having an Overload DPS. So not only is he filling up the specific niche of Electro DPS really well, but if you delve even further into that, he's going to fill up this certain category of Electro DPS, thus meaning you're basically never going to have to get a new one in that specific category, because I personally believe that Flins is just not going to get power crept in that regard. His kit is far too specific in terms of what it specializes in order for Hoiverse to comfortably power creep him in a way that wouldn't seem very deliberate. His high investment is also ridiculously nice. I have already said at length how good he is as a free-to-play friendly unit. If you're a free-to-play and you don't have an EFA and you have to use him on absolute baseline gear, he is still going to serve you for a very long time in my opinion, even if you don't really want to put that much into him, and you can very easily just go and pick up a very generalist polearm, which will benefit your Flins and help out your entire account on the whole, because you're able to put that on basically anyone, something like Staff of Homa for example. However, if you are willing to go and invest into Flins specifically, then this is only going to solidify him as being one of the most future-proof units. Now, I don't think he's going to be future-proof in the sense of no Valette, or Mr. Settle Down somehow gets a new teammate like every other patch. It's kind of ridiculous, but I do think that he's going to be future-proof in the sense that because his baseline is already so freaking powerful and it has so much room to improve, it's only going to progressively get better and better over the course of the region, even if you don't really invest that much into him. I'm thinking namely a replacement for Aino, but like I said earlier, Sucrose is also replaceable. They could very much make a more specific animal character, or just a more specific character that shares EM in general that's going to be very good for Flins. I wouldn't put that past Hoiverse. So there is a ton of room for him to improve. Inefa is basically never getting replaced, and like I said, you can very comfortably invest into her and be very comfortable in the fact that she's basically never going to get replaced in his teams, and is always going to be a ridiculously good increase to him. And in Flins' case, the more you're willing to invest, the more impressive he's going to become. I do personally think that if you simply just pull for Columbina down the line, you're going to get a ridiculous ceiling increase and you're going to be very satisfied with him. But if you're willing to get his constellations, he genuinely has such busted early constellations, and I am never going to stop glazing them, because it is such a worthwhile investment. It is so worth your time if you're really into Flins. And trust me, I can understand being into Flins. He is very attractive. So, I personally think that the C1 is well worth your time if you're super interested in the character, because not only is it a really good increase if you don't have an EFA to the point where you can compensate for not having her, but it's also just going to completely solidify him as being this absolute behemoth on your account, because his C1 pairs very nicely with an EFA in the team as well. No matter what, you basically cannot lose with this guy. He seems so specific, which you might think would make him not that future-proof, especially because future-proof is something that you would only really apply to a character that has insane effective versatility like Novelette, or somebody like Lady Farina where they work with basically everyone to the point where they just can't really fade out of the meta ever. However, I just think that at least for the next 2 or so years, Flins is going to be a very noteworthy member of the Genshin meta, not only through just having a very strong inherent kit that's just very easy to improve upon, but also just from having the most ridiculous high investment ever, because even if you're afraid to play and you don't want to put that much into him, even a little bit is a really good increase for him. All around, this character is just going to stack up so well on your account. I personally think that he's going to last a lot longer than Lauma, because I just find that crit-based DPSs are always going to do better than Bloom characters or anybody like that. Nilou was really good for her time, but once her era ended, she just ended up becoming aggressively mediocre, and I unfortunately just don't see Lauma escaping that fate. I think she'll last longer than Nilou, but I just can't see her lasting that long, because it's just a similar situation as Nilou. Very strong Bloom character, amazing in AoE right now, but is eventually going to fall off at some stage. I feel like Flins' meta value is a lot more set in stone, and for those reasons, I believe him to be very future-proof. Hopefully this video was able to tell you why I personally think that Flins is future-proof. This has been Juice, signing out, and I know that I'll be using him as long as possible, because I just want to keep looking at him.